I think you look at Hong Kong and many cities, it's natural for property to slump, but Hong Kong's market has been seen as unsinkable over the years. But this slump is different because, well, if you look back at the start of the slump, it started with the pro-democracy protests in 2019, then worsened with COVID, and then we saw the exodus of a lot of foreign firms there. And then, as that clampdown by President Xi has progressed, there's been sort of questions over the status of Hong Kong as a financial hub, and that's really depressed sentiment among the population there. People have been leaving the city, and really, I think, in the housing market, yes, and also in the commercial market, we're seeing sentiment plunge, and that seems to be more of a deep-seated thing rather than, just a cyclical sort of downturn that we've seen in the past.
But we did see the government trying to boost the property sector, scrapping some curbs and levies. Why didn't that help?
Yeah, so in March we saw the levies were scrapped, and that actually resulted in a real jump in sales. There was sort of a frenzy of sales, at showrooms of the famous developers like CK Asset. But what they were doing was that they were offering these properties at a heavy discount. And so while sales rose, prices did not. And actually we're seeing that temporary bump in sales also come off in recent weeks as well. So really, they got a bit of a sugar high from the removal of those curbs, but it really hasn't lasted.
So are there any bright spots going forward that could give some hope for the property sector in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I think one bright thing is to flip the coin and sort of think, well, okay, falling prices has actually improved affordability. Hong Kong is famously one of the most unaffordable property
yes,
markets.
I remember. Yeah. The tiny little apartments.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that has helped. But, I mean, that's cold comfort for people who already own a home, people who are seeing property as a long-term investment. I mean, it's a sort of similar situation to what we're seeing north of the border there in mainland China with the property crisis there. Prices are falling, affordability is improving, but really property as a long-term investment prospect is going down. One other bright side, I think, possibly in the future is the potential for interest rates to fall. One of the big drivers of this property slump has been the enormous ramping up of interest rate hikes, and the fact that the Hong Kong dollar is pegged to the US dollar. Once the Fed actually, if and when finally cuts, that will offer some relief to home buyers and homeowners.